speaking of inspiring, it's my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Rachel Jagoda Brunette, who I also get to work with, and I'm lucky enough to have in my circle of friends and confidants. So as we celebrate the 10th anniversary, the 10th annual InventOR Finals, there are a few people whose fingerprints can be found more clearly on this program than Rachel's, as we have heard repeatedly since yesterday. Long before the first teams took the stage, Rachel was one of the architects of the vision that became InventOR. Through her leadership at the Lemelson Foundation, she helped champion the idea that innovation and invention could thrive in every corner of Oregon, and that students, regardless of where they lived or attended school, deserve the opportunity to develop their ideas, build their confidence, and pursue entrepreneurship. Over the past decade, that vision has grown into a truly statewide community of students, mentors, educators, entrepreneurs, investors, and partners working together to transform ideas into impact. Today, Rachel serves as the CEO of Regional Accelerator and Innovation Network, or more easily called RAIN, and leads the Cascade West Innovation Hub, where she continues to strengthen Oregon's innovation ecosystem and expand opportunities for entrepreneurs and innovators across the state. But perhaps most importantly for us today, Rachel has been part of the InventOR story from the very beginning. As we reflect on the past decade and look forward to the future, there is no one better suited to help us understand the impact of this community and the possibilities that lie ahead. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to my friend, Rachel Jagoda Brunette.
Can everybody hear me? This is a super awkward time to give a keynote speech because over the course of the day, pretty much everything I was planning on saying has already been said. Um, so we could either just skip ahead, but I think Blake needs some more time to start compiling the awards. So I have just a few things that I want to point out. Oh, and I forgot I had slides too. Look at that. Maybe I can stand over here. I have notes because I'm old now and can't remember what I was going to say. So first of all, I just want to reiterate the congratulations from Kara, from Stacy, from everyone here. Putting yourself forward with an idea that you build is really hard, not just from a technical engineering standpoint, but from an emotional standpoint, from a confidence standpoint. And whether you stood up with something that you started 2 weeks ago, 2 years ago, sharing that part of yourself and the work that you did is something that's really personal and it's really special. And so I hope that all of the competitors, whether you were here this year or in previous years, walk away knowing that that was really brave. And being brave is an incredibly important part of being an inventor and making an impact. And also just want to again thank everyone who is involved in organizing this. I felt embarrassed and a little self-conscious with all the recognition because this is not something that one person can do. One person can maybe bring an idea, as many of you did as inventors, but building something, making it work, making it grow is a huge team effort. And there are so many people, many of them here, but many of them not here, that were part of building this program into what it is today. So I am honored to be able to speak on their behalf and hope that you will know that out there are a lot of people who really care about your success as inventors and entrepreneurs. So I want to tell a quick story that has nothing to do with the InventOR program. One of the things that we did when I was at the Lemelson Foundation was build some programs in K-12 invention education. And one of the people who was involved in it is here in the front row, Shashi Jan, was called Thai Young Entrepreneurs. And this was an in-classroom invention program for students who wanted to walk through much of the same process that you all did, learning about how to identify a problem, building a prototype, thinking about how to take it to market. One of the schools that first adopted this was Benson Polytechnic in Portland. And because of the curriculum requirements for a lot of the students, we ended up in a classroom that was students who had really been struggling. They had already transferred to Benson because the traditional curriculum at standard public schools wasn't working for them. And then at Benson, they even found that some of the CTE focus work was not working. Many of them were on the verge of dropping out. And it was in this classroom where students were told, think of a problem. They thought, tell me what problem. No, think of a problem that you care about, and now think of a solution, and think of a way to make that solution better and turn it into a business. And oh, by the way, this is something you can do in your career. You don't have to go work for someone else. You can do this. And there was one young man that I met one day as part of this class who said that he had been on the verge of dropping out. He was going to walk out of school one day and never come back. And then he started doing this entrepreneurship and invention programming. And all of a sudden, he realized that the path that had been laid before him in school was not the path he had to follow. He could create his own path. And all of a sudden, he started coming to classes. His teacher said his grades were going up. And it wasn't because, oh, he suddenly got smarter. He was already smart. It was because the motivation that comes from knowing that you can invent, that you can create the solution, was enough to get him back engaged and seeing a future that was going to be meaningful for him. So I want to share a few lessons from invention generally. And I don't think any of these are going to be a surprise, but maybe for the parents and audience members here, they will be. But for the inventors, I think it'll just be a distillation of what you've been learning. And the first thing is this concept that every problem out there has a solution. One of the things that we always talked about when I was at the Lemelson Foundation was big problems. When I started there, the foundation was focused on global issues, global development, and inventions at some of the most prestigious institutions in the US, the brand name places that you hear about on the East Coast. And they were addressing things like climate change, strengthening agriculture, medicine, creating these products that didn't just improve lives, but that were absolutely game-changing. And one of the arguments that I often had with the team there was that those are not the only problems worth solving. They absolutely are worth solving. And there's lots of inventors here in Oregon who are doing that kind of work. But a lot of the problems that are worth solving are the ones that people are experiencing in their daily lives. They might not be something that ends up on the evening news or on CNN or winning a Nobel Prize, but that doesn't make them any less of a problem. There are so many challenges that only inventors who are living and working in communities can identify. And that's what we're seeing here with InventOR. The lived experience of the students across the state is what is defining the commercial possibility of these inventions. One of the things that I often said to students, and actually just said to someone in the green room, was don't ever tell someone, oh, someone should invent blah, blah, blah. Someone should invent a better mousetrap. Because if you are at the point where you're saying someone should invent, you've identified the problem. And that is the first step in inventing something. Once you've identified that problem, all it takes from there is work and creativity. And so don't put that out into the void. Don't send it to someone else. Keep at it yourself, because the solutions are strongest when they emerge from real experience. So one of the things that Stacy had asked me to talk about was a little more about the origin of InventOR again. And again, this is not something that was just me. This was one who you heard from earlier today, Angela Jackson, who was at PSU at the time, Heather Stafford from Business Oregon, lots of other people who came together and built this. But what had sparked it on my end was that I had joined the Lemelson Foundation, which is a family foundation based in Portland, Oregon, focused on invention innovation. Jerry Lemelson, who is the founder of the foundation, which always feels very repetitive to say to me, was an inventor himself. He had over 600 patents. And so the vision that the foundation had was that invention could change the world. And when I was brought on in 2014, they had said, we've been doing this work with MIT, around the world, in India, Indonesia, Kenya. Let's do something in Oregon. Rachel, make it happen. And at first, what they thought was, we'll just do everything we've been doing everywhere else, and we'll just do it in Oregon, and it'll work fine. And one of the biggest arguments that I had repeatedly there was that Oregon is not the same as everywhere else. You cannot just take what you've been doing at MIT and Kenya and India and the Smithsonian Institution and say, we're going to do it in Oregon, make a grant, and you're done. Oregon needed something different. We have diverse industries. We have strong rural communities. We have institutions serving traditional students, returning adults, English language learners, tribal communities, new Oregonians, multi-generational Oregonians. We have community colleges, we have four-year institutions, we have specialized graduate schools. And all of those have their own unique capacities to both support their students and support the ideas that their students are coming forward with. And so the problem that we identified that we were trying to solve with Invent Oregon was, how can we create opportunities for students from all of these different diverse backgrounds to identify problems, solve them with products, and think about how they want to turn those products into businesses that can reach their customers and make an impact in the world. And so it started out probably very similar to how many of your products started out. There were a few people. We had a whiteboard. We had a couple dry erase markers. And we were in a corner office of the old Portland State Business Accelerator building, the one that was impossible to get to off the Ross Island Bridge. And we asked that question, how do we help Oregon students to become inventors? And the answer we came up with was, we need to build a pathway. We need to have something that can take students from those early experiences when they're in kindergarten with Legos, thinking, I want a house, I'm gonna build a house, to experiences that they were having in invention education through programs like Thai Young Entrepreneurs and Oregon Mesa and others, and have something that continued that specific type of education and motivation into higher ed. And so Invent Oregon was born. I guess I already said that, sorry. So you know, the point of Invent Oregon being born was not the be-all end-all. It was not what it is today. We had a year to plan our first competition. We had a lot of visions. I had a lot of visions. You know, I felt a lot of pressure to show the Lemelson Foundation that this was something that was going to work, and to show the ecosystem that this is something that was worth people investing their time and their money in. And I was really focused at the time on businesses. I thought, if we can just have some businesses coming out of this and selling products and hiring people and making money and getting investments, that's going to be how we demonstrate the value of this to all of the people who've put their time and effort into it. And you know, I would say that was part of my failure. But as everyone here has learned, you know, one of the most important skills that inventors develop is learning how to fail. And it is a skill. Failure is not something that is always obvious. Sometimes you have a partial failure. Sometimes you have a failure that you don't recognize for a long time. Sometimes, you know, your device literally blows up, and that's pretty obvious. But you know, one of the things that I think is really critically important in this process is learning to gather feedback rather than just defending assumptions. And so, you know, my failure was, I thought I would come into this, we'd try to force themes on all of the different institutions. So instead of saying, you know, OSU-based inventors can identify problems in their community and solve them, I was thinking, oh, you know, OSU does wood products, so we should make every OSU team do some kind of wood product program, and we'll make it all thematic, and, you know, we'll see which industry emerges victorious from each of the competitions. And again, that expectation that the startups coming out of it would scale quickly, and really putting all of our eggs in that basket. And I learned a lot from that not happening. One was that, you know, trying to build companies and sectors in a really short period of time is not possible. It takes a really long time for companies to emerge. But two, and even more importantly, something that I learned from Juan, and Stacy and others was that that's the wrong priority for this program. That is not what Invent Oregon is supposed to be about. It's not supposed to be about someone coming up, taking a check, launching a factory and starting a company right away. It's about learning the skills around invention to take in whatever direction you need to take them in after the fact. And that piece, I think, is what really strengthens our state's economy, because if we have a generation of people who are confident in their ability to identify and solve problems, who are confident in building products and learning from iterations, that's really what's going to help us in the long term, whether or not we have someone starting a company straight out of InventOR or not. So the final piece, the final thing I want to highlight, again, is something that you all know, which is that nobody succeeds in invention and entrepreneurship by themselves. This is just a simple truth. One of the things that I was inspired by, going back to wanting to bring Lemelson programs here, there is an organization called VentureWell. It used to be called the National Collegiate Inventors and Innovators Alliance, until the sort of trademark around the NCAA forced them to change that. They do a program for students, which some of you should absolutely look into because I think you're very ready for it, called eTeams. And this is a tiered grant program in stages that helps teams who have products develop them, get ready for commercialization, and then get some non-dilutive investment in the end. But the important part about eTeams is that you are required to have an engineer, a business person, someone who does marketing. You can't have kind of a mono skill set. And the reason that they do that is that's what's necessary for companies to be successful. You can't just have one person doing it all. And a lot of times, and I know like Kara sees this, and a lot of us who work in entrepreneurship see this, you have an inventor who wants to be the CEO of their company, and it's usually a complete nightmare because they have no idea what they're doing. Just because you invented the product doesn't mean that you know how to do the business. So, I was really inspired by that eTeam model, and I appreciate that InventOR really encourages teams to be built, bringing in lots of different skill sets. And one of the teams I was working with today didn't have the opportunity to do that. Their team had people who were all from the same academic program, but they recognized that. And I gave them a lot of credit for saying, hey, we shouldn't have just had mechanical engineers on this team. It's one of the things that held us back. And that learning, I think, was more important, honestly, than having a perfect prototype. So yeah, why do teams matter? Because you can have a product, it can look like it works, but can people afford it? Are people going to use it? Can it be manufactured? Can it be distributed? Does it solve the problem you were trying to solve? And different perspectives are going to help get you to that point. But another thing that I think is really critically important is that your team are not the only people who are supporting your entrepreneurial journey. There's, a lot of us out there who are rooting on Oregon's entrepreneurs. And I hope you know that you can reach out to all of these groups that are dedicated to missions of enabling entrepreneurship and innovation in Oregon. You are the reason that organizations like RAIN, like OEN, and others exist. And so we want you to come to us to help you. But there's also that background of people in your lives that really are there cheering you on. And one of my favorite InventOR stories happened in the very early months of COVID. It was back when we didn't have N95 masks yet. Everyone was sort of masking with whatever materials they could find around their house. And so I think I had made one out of like bandanas and was going to the Safeway near my house to go shopping, back when we were still all spraying Lysol in our groceries afterwards. And I was wearing an InventOR t-shirt because, go out, got to represent. And as I was getting ready to go, a woman stopped me and said, and she was also masked up. And I don't do faces very well to begin with, but, and said, like, oh, do you know InventOR? And I was like, yeah, and got really excited. I was like, yeah, I was part of like this group of people that helped start it at the Lemelson Foundation. We worked with all these folks. And she's like, InventOR changed my son's life. And I was like, who's your son? And it was Blake's mom. And that moment in the Safeway touched me, I think, more than anything else, because solving these problems, coming up with a product, working on this, seeing someone in your life blossom into an inventor is so powerful. And I'm a mom too, and so sometimes I look at the teams here, and you're getting to that age where I'm like, oh, you could be my kids, but like if your kid makes something that works, that's an incredible feeling. That's creation. And so having a chance to just share that moment with like Turner's mom was really special. And I think just an indication of how much this program and all of the people who've been involved in this program have changed the lives of students. So as I wrap up, because I know that all of you are waiting for the big announcement of who's winning, I'm gonna start talking slowly just to torture you. I wanna think back to that student from Benson High School. For him, the outcome, it wasn't about the product. It wasn't about competing with his classmates. It was about the realization that he was in charge of his own life. And I hope that all of you walk away with that same realization. Maybe some of you have always wanted to be an inventor, and maybe some of you have grown up in places where you were told, that your path was working for someone else. And I hope that those of you who are in that former category feel even more confidence right now of what you're capable of. And for those of you in the latter category who maybe have grown up in communities or gone to schools where people saw you as an asset for someone else, you need to be trained to go work for this company and make money for this company, and it was never about you and what you wanted. I hope you realize you don't have to do that. You can chart your own path. And so with that, whether your invention becomes a company or a nonprofit or a research project or just, something that you fondly remember 10 or 15 years from now as a project that you worked on, remember that the world needs people who believe that problems can be solved. And the future of Oregon is not going to be built by people who wait for someone else to fix things. It's going to be built by inventors. So thank you.